I never saw it coming. I mean, who really expects to get caught up in something like this? It started out innocent enough, a job offer too good to pass up. I was in a rough spot, bills piling up, the pressure mounting. So when I saw the ad online, it felt like a godsend. High-paying job in the city, no experience necessary. Training provided. Start immediately. Sounded perfect, right? The whole thing seemed legit, professional website, detailed job description, even a glowing testimonial from someone who'd apparently landed the gig and turned their life around. I should have known better. I should have paid more attention to the warning signs, but I was desperate. So, I applied. Within hours, I got a call from a woman named Sarah, friendly, reassuring, the kind of voice that makes you trust someone right off the bat. She congratulated me, said I'd been selected for an interview the next day at their downtown office. When I arrived, everything looked normal. It was in a sleek building in a busy part of town, people in suits walking in and out, all looking important. I went up to the reception desk, gave them my name, and was escorted to a conference room on one of the upper floors. There were a few other people waiting there too, nervous smiles, hands fidgeting with their paperwork. We made small talk, exchanging pleasantries, all of us hopeful, excited even. The kind of excitement you get when you think your life is about to change for the better. After a few minutes, a man walked in. He was dressed sharp, a well-tailored suit, hair slicked back, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He introduced himself as Mr. Stone, the hiring manager. His voice was smooth, confident, the kind of guy who could sell ice to an Eskimo. He went on about the job, how they were expanding rapidly, needed new blood to keep up with demand, and how lucky we were to be selected. It was all fluff, but he sold it well. Then came the tour. He led us through the office, showing off the high-tech equipment, the sleek workspaces, the perks of the job. Everything seemed above board, even impressive. But as we went deeper into the building, things started to feel off. The atmosphere changed, colder, darker. We were taken down a set of stairs to a lower level. The walls were bare, the lighting dim, the air stale. My gut started to churn, but I brushed it off, telling myself it was just nerves. Mr. Stone led us into a small room at the end of a long, narrow hallway. The room was sterile, white walls, harsh fluorescent lights, a metal table in the center. There were medical instruments laid out neatly on a tray next to the table. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't right. I glanced at the others, their faces mirroring my unease. Mr. Stone's smile was gone now, replaced by something colder, more sinister. Before I could react, the door swung open and two men stepped in, big guys, dressed in scrubs, their expressions blank. They grabbed one of the other candidates, a young guy named Mike, and forced him onto the table. He started to struggle, yelling, but they held him down, strapping him to the table with thick leather restraints. Panic surged through me, but I was frozen, unable to move, my mind racing to catch up with what was happening. Mr. Stone turned to us, his voice calm, almost soothing. "This is part of the process," he said. "It's nothing to be afraid of. We just need to make sure you're healthy, that you're a good fit for the job." But there was something in his eyes, something dark, that made my blood run cold. I watched in horror as the men in scrubs pulled out a syringe, filled with some kind of clear liquid, and injected it into Mike's arm. His struggles slowed, his body going limp as the drug took effect. Then they pulled out a scalpel. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. They started cutting, precise, methodical incisions across his torso. Blood pooled on the table, dripping onto the floor, the sound of it hitting the tiles echoing in the small room. It was then that I realized, this wasn't a job. This was a trap. They were harvesting organs, and we were the donors. I could feel the bile rising in my throat, my mind screaming at me to run, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. One of the other candidates, a woman, bolted for the door, but one of the men caught her before she could get far, dragging her back kicking and screaming. I knew I was next. As they moved to restrain her, I snapped out of my daze. Somehow, my survival instincts kicked in, and I managed to inch toward the door. The men were distracted, focused on subduing the woman. I saw my chance and took it. I bolted out of the room, my heart hammering in my chest, my feet barely touching the ground as I sprinted down the hallway. I didn't stop, didn't look back, just ran for my life. The building was a maze, but adrenaline pushed me forward. I could hear footsteps behind me, shouts echoing through the halls, but I didn't slow down. I burst through a door and found myself in the alley behind the building. The fresh air hit me like a slap to the face, but I kept running, my lungs burning, my legs screaming for relief. I didn't stop until I was blocks away, collapsing against a wall, gasping for breath, my body shaking with fear and exhaustion. I never went back. I didn't report it. Who would believe me? I still have nightmares about it, seeing those men in scrubs, the coldness in Mr. Stone's eyes, the sound of that scalpel slicing through flesh. Every now and then, I catch a glimpse of something on the news, another person gone missing, another lucrative job posted online. I know what's really happening, but no one else seems to see it. I got out by the skin of my teeth, but there are others who weren't so lucky. I can still hear their screams, echoing in my mind, reminding me that monsters are real. They don't hide under your bed, they smile at you, shake your hand, and offer you a job.
I never thought that a beauty contest audition would lead me into the darkest chapter of my life. At just 16, I was naive, filled with dreams of glitz and glamour. My dad, wanting to support my aspirations, agreed to take me to the audition in a city that felt both exciting and intimidating. The day started like any other, but it would end in a nightmare. As we arrived at the venue, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Girls my age, dressed in vibrant outfits, were laughing and chatting, their smiles hiding the anxiety that lay beneath. I felt a mix of excitement and nerves, but my dad reassured me. Little did we know, the people behind the audition were not who they claimed to be. After the initial rounds, I was pulled aside by a woman who introduced herself as a talent scout. She had a charming smile, but something about her felt off. She told my dad that I had great potential and that I needed to meet a few important people who could help launch my career. My dad, trusting and unaware of the danger, agreed to let me go with her for what he thought would be a brief meeting. That was the last time I saw him. I found myself in a dimly lit room, surrounded by other girls who looked just as confused and scared as I felt. The woman's demeanor changed instantly. She became cold and commanding. I realized too late that I had walked into a trap set by human traffickers. Panic surged through me as I tried to comprehend what was happening. I was terrified, but I knew I had to stay calm. When the traffickers began to separate us, I seized my chance. In the chaos, I bolted for the door, heart racing as I sprinted down an alley. I could hear shouts behind me, but adrenaline pushed me forward. I ran until I reached the riverbank, the moonlight shimmering on the water. Without thinking, I jumped into the river, hoping to escape their grasp. The cold water shocked me, but I swam with all my might. Suddenly, I heard the roar of engines. The police were chasing the traffickers in speedboats. I could see the lights flashing in the distance, but I was too exhausted to swim towards them. Instead, I clung to a piece of driftwood, praying I wouldn't be swept away. As I floated, I felt something brush against my leg. My heart dropped as I realized I was not alone. Alligators lurked beneath the surface, their eyes glinting in the dark. I held my breath, trying to remain as still as possible. I could hear the police sirens getting closer, but I was trapped between two dangers, the water and the predators lurking below. After what felt like hours, the police boats sped past, their lights illuminating the river. I took a deep breath and dove underwater, swimming frantically to avoid the alligators. I managed to reach the riverbank, pulling myself out just as the boats returned to search for me. I lay on the shore, shivering and terrified, but alive. For the next 3 days, I wandered through the dense forest, disoriented and hungry. I had no food, no water, and no idea where I was. I relied on my instincts, foraging for berries and drinking from streams. Each night, I listened to the sounds of the forest, my heart heavy with the thought of the other girls still in the traffickers' hands. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to do something to help them. Finally, on the 4th day, I stumbled upon a road. A passing car stopped, and the driver, seeing my disheveled state, rushed me to the nearest police station. I recounted my harrowing tale, and the officers sprang into action, launching a search for the traffickers and the other girls. In the aftermath, I learned that many girls had been rescued, but the fight was far from over. I vowed to use my experience to raise awareness about human trafficking, to ensure that no one else would have to endure what I had. I became a voice for the voiceless, determined to shine a light on the shadows where so many still suffered. I emerged from that nightmare not just as a survivor, but as a warrior, ready to fight for the freedom of others.